All right, folks, we got day three of SEC Media Days in Nashville. New venue for the conference, but it still means more. Still the top college football conference, no question about that. That might spark a little bit in the chat. That always does. The best conference in college football. We got Ty Hudson here talking hogs. Catch Ty on Tusk Talk with Ty. Ty, what's going on today?
Yo, Mark, how you doing, man?
Doing well, doing well. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Glad I could. I'm glad that I'm able to make this one, and I'm honored as always when you ask me to come on. I'm like, well, of course. So I always make a little time for my guy, Mark.
Well, before we get deep into the pig suey here, we want people to know where they can find you and what's going on there at Tusk Talk these days.
Yeah, still because it's those summer hours. They call this the talking season, which you would think would be phenomenal, and it probably is for guys like you who cover the entire landscape. But for someone who just covers a single team, it's pretty brutal. Actually, July's been very brutal. But I write out scripts, I make videos, and I released a video this morning actually at 10 o'clock talking about Pro Football Focus had put Arkansas as the dark horse in the SEC, which I found interesting. Thought it was an interesting topic. So got that video going this morning at 10 o'clock. You can go check that out. Live streams are kind of limited to about one or two a week right now. But man, fall camp is right around the corner. We don't have an actual date yet when that starts, but oh my goodness, that's when things get real. So I'm really excited for the month of August.
Sam Pittman's suddenly a veteran in this league. He's been around for quite a while. Of course, he did his work on the offensive line there at Georgia coaching, but as a head coach, he's now been around the block a few times. And did anything that he have to say here as he just left the podium there at SEC Media Days catch your ear?
Yeah, there were a number of things. Nothing, shocking. He actually talked with the media, the local media, before he went on, and had some really interesting things to say. And again, you're not going to catch this on the SEC when he was on the panel. This was before he took the stage, but said that everyone was healthy aside from Quincy McAdoo, the corner who switched over from wide receiver last year as a freshman, more than halfway through the year, and was an absolute star. Came in and had an impact right out the gate. Makes you wish they'd done that a little sooner, maybe even as far back as fall camp last year. But I don't think he's willing to come out and say it. I don't think Quincy McAdoo is going to be able to play this year, but everyone else is healthy, which, obviously then the question is, well, what about Dominic Johnson? And Dominic Johnson is medically cleared to play in 2023. A lot of Hog fans excited, to see him back. That backfield is going to be completely loaded. I don't know how much Dominic will have an impact on 2023 yet. I don't really know. I think we're going to know a lot more through fall camp. He also made the statement about his coordinators. Again, this was before he took the stage. That he didn't actually, he just said it. I didn't want to lose my coordinators, which, I mean, what else is a guy supposed to say? Of course, he's not going to come out and say, well, I fired them because they were bums or, whatever. You don't expect a coach to say that. But for him to specifically say, I did not want to lose my coordinators, when some of the smoke or the signals that I think a lot of fans and including some media people thought was that Barry Odom was, because they're such close friends, that he wasn't going to fire Barry Odom, but allow him or basically say, hey, look, there's a job opening, go take it. And we know he was in the mix for I think Tulsa. And of course he wound up at UNLV. And then the Kendall Briles stuff, there was also a lot of drama around that. And it seemed pretty quick that when Kendall entertained the idea of the TCU job, they were just done. Okay, well, I'm just going to cut ties and we're just going to go grab my guy Dan Enos from Maryland. But he came out and just said, I didn't want to lose my coordinators. So not shocking that he said that, but it was somewhat, for him to use those exact words was pretty interesting. Sam at the podium, he made a comment about, he talked about the Liberty Bowl victory, not having, and I think that math adds up. He said they were without 9 starters against KU in the Liberty Bowl, and they still found a way to win that game. That game had a very interesting second half. KU got so many borderline calls in the second half that allowed that to become more of a game than it should have been. Arkansas certainly seemed to be in the driver's seat for a while in that game.
To my angst in particular, Ty, because I picked Arkansas to cover the spread, so I was not too happy about that.
Oh, it was I don't know if you remember. I don't exactly remember the calls. I think there was a fumble. One of the wide receivers caught the ball and he was clearly down. His elbow was down. I don't remember if it got challenged or not. I need to go back and watch that game, really. But I remember I don't think it was a fumble, and that was a big one. And there was another call. There were 2 or 3 calls that were just huge, and they all went in KU's favor. And, of course, you ended up having the kind of dramatic finish in that one. But he talked about, how big that was for them, that, they were able to answer the call without 9 guys, big pieces too, Drew Sanders being one of them, who obviously I think was an absolute steal in the NFL draft. I really thought that cat was going to go in the late first, maybe early second round, and he slipped a little bit. But they didn't have Drew Sanders and a number of other guys that didn't play in the bowl game. I can't remember them all off the top of my head, but yeah, I think that was actually a really good point. I'm glad he brought that up. Hey, we responded. We were without 9 guys, and we found a way to win the game, and that's exactly what they did. He also admitted he was going to get more into analytics this year. He talked about, not going for it on 4th down a little bit. I think the belief is that's certainly going to change this year. They're going to try and go for it more often on 4th down. And something that he said during, I think it was before spring camp, that they wanted to be more physical this year. I don't think he talked as much about that today that I heard. Keep in mind, I have a house full of kids today, but from what I understand, or from what I heard, I don't think he mentioned the physicality aspect of how they want to move forward through fall camp. But I think that's something Hog fans are going to see, which is why, what he said earlier before taking the podium to the local media about no one, or, only Quincy McAdoo being the guy out is huge, because you're going into the fall camp. It's presumably going to be more physical, and you're 99% go. Like, you're missing just one guy who is a huge piece, by the way. We cannot understate how big of a deal it is to not have Quincy McAdoo. That was a guy who was expected to start in 2023. That's a huge loss for that secondary. But being as healthy as they are and wanting to be physical this fall camp, those are that's a good combination. It gives you a little bit of a head start. So, yeah, there's more here. I can keep going, or if you have any questions, or if chat has any questions.
Oh, I've got a few questions here, Ty. So again, Ty Hudson, Tusk Talk with Ty. Got to watch the alliteration on that. Tusk Talk with Ty.
Yeah.
Follow him on YouTube. We will have the banner up, so you will know where to follow Ty Hudson 83. That's a St. Louis, Los Angeles Rams reference, right? 83? Or is that the year you were born?
It was the year I was born.
Year you were born. Okay.
Yeah, I
know you're a big Rams fan.
Oh yeah, big Rams fan. And before the greatest show on turf, by the way, I get that hurled at me. I've got a picture of myself in 7th grade, 1996, wearing my Isaac Bruce Rams jersey that unfortunately I grew out of pretty quick, but that was my favorite thing in the world, was that Isaac Bruce jersey. And I was going to name, if I ever had a boy, I was going to name him Isaac after Isaac Bruce. That's how much I looked up to him as a kid back in the 90s. And it was not the reason, but it was a pretty big reason why I was such a Rams fan throughout the horrible early start in St. Louis until eventually, Mike Martz and Kurt Warner and Marshall Faulk and, those guys, Torrey Holt. But 83. It's funny because that's an old email that I've had almost since high school, Tyzilla83. And every time someone asks me for my email, I'm like, please don't judge me. But I've had this email address for like 20 years, since Gmail was like a thing. Don't judge me, but here's my email. It's Tyzilla83@gmail. And every once in a while I'll get kind of a giggle. Like, don't worry, I do it too. I have some stuff that I can't let go of either. So, but yeah, that's where that comes from.
I think it was the last time, Ty, we had you on, we caused quite a stir in the chat. We got people riled up about the SEC being the best conference and picking on the Big Ten, and Iowa fans in particular coming out after you. So,
yeah, I was expecting some hate mail or a DM from an Iowa fan like, hey, listen here, guy. But I didn't. I was a little disappointed, but yeah, I don't remember what exactly that entailed, but I do remember taking some shots at Iowa. Now, the Big Ten, I have a lot of respect for. I do think the Big Ten is on the heels of the SEC in football. I really do. I think they're not far behind the SEC at all. We'll see if that gap is if it's going to be wider in 2023 and onward, especially with this expansion happening in 2024 with Texas and Oklahoma. Certainly feels like that's going to be the case. I don't know how it's not when you add those two to your already bolstered roster of teams. Now you're going to add those two guys or those two teams, but yeah, no real disrespect for me for the Big Ten, and I'm not saying that because you're in Big Ten country and that's a lot of your audience, but I've felt that way for a while. A lot of good football programs in that conference.
So Ty, you brought up the name Dan Enos, and you talked about taking shots at the Big Ten. Dan Enos took a shot, as you were explaining to me, at Big Ten or at SEC Media Days today. And so Dan Enos is a guy that obviously ran this offense at this program from 2015 through 17. Now it's a different program now. He's come back after a stint at Maryland, and he's shown the ability to run a different style of offense and be able to adapt to personnel, because the most important personnel is KJ Jefferson, who has certainly outplayed my original expectations of him. If you look at just statistically, this is a guy that completed less than 50% of his passes through about his first 75 or 80 throws in college football, and has just become such a more polished quarterback. And he's still the wrecking crew that he is in the secondary once he combines that speed and that big body and really wreaks havoc on safeties and defensive backfields once he gets into the backfield. But your thoughts about Dan Enos running this offense and what it looks like?
Yeah, well, what we saw in spring, and I've mentioned this before, but I think I was at every spring practice except maybe two, and one of those, unfortunately, was a scrimmage I didn't get to see. It looks, I mean, yeah, you're going to see probably a lot of what they did see at Maryland. Actually, you're going to see plenty of pistol offense, two tight end sets, lone back. Something Hog fans are going to have to get used to. You're going to see KJ under center. And that's not going to be at the goal line. That's going to be at their own 25 or their own 40. You're going to see him line up under center. They are going to it is going to be a mix of traditional, maybe lone back sets, one running back or single back sets, but you're going to see plenty of two tight end sets. You're going to see a lot of they may go heavy every once in a while, and I don't know what to expect. Like you said, he's really good at adapting to what he has. And you go back to 2015, one of the Sam Pittman pointed out, they've only had 3 seasons, which I thought it was 4, but I thought it was 5 times they've done this. It's only 3 times they've had 6,000 total yards of offense. Well, Dan Enos is one of those in 2015, according to Sam, which I haven't done my research there. I know that I do remember that being a very great year offensively. I just didn't realize the amount of yards. And last year they did it too. They had 6,200 yards or something like that, finished somewhere in the top 20. So yeah, big shoes to fill there with what Kendall was able to do, especially on the ground last year. But yeah, I think it's probably going to be more run oriented. I really do. The more I look at it, and based on what we saw all through spring camp, all through even in the spring scrimmage, man, they were run focused. They were run heavy focused. It was like it, and I hate to say this. I mean, as someone who was there doing a job, who's trying to watch these guys practice and kind of see where everybody's at, I could see that from a fan's perspective being like, damn, this is boring. This is just, a lot of just lining up and handing the ball off. And that's not what fans want to see. Now, we also have to argue the other side of this, which is that they're not going to show you everything, and they're not going to show the media. They know what the media does. They know that they're going to go back to Twitter, to Facebook, or to their websites, to their message boards, and talk about what they're seeing. And of course, there's going to be plenty of video footage. I've uploaded a bunch of shorts on my YouTube channel from their fall camp last year and spring camp this year. So they're aware of that. And they're not going to give you everything, but I do think there was a focus to the offensive line, to the running backs, to the tight ends. Luke Haas, freshman out of Oklahoma, you're going to run some routes. By the way, every time that cat caught the football, he was wide open, nobody within 15, 20 yards of him. But guess what? You're going to be blocking a lot. That was kind of what I took away from spring camp. And the more I watch some of the footage that I haven't uploaded to the internet, the more I'm just like, they're going to run the hell out of the ball this year, I think. And it's good that they have what they have. Now, in terms of personnel, when you look at Rocket and AJ Green, DeBinion, now Dominic Johnson, we'll see if he's ready to go by fall camp. And of course, KJ with that big 245 plus pound frame. There will be some RPO. The RPO is going to be there. It's not going to be the veer and shoot. It's not going to be Kendall Browse's version of that offense, but you will have some RPO. KJ is going to run the ball. You'd be crazy to not let KJ run the ball. Is he going to run the ball 16 times a game? We'll have to wait and see. I don't think so, because I think Enos is going to, just based on what I've seen so far and talking to other media people that were there and kind of, listening to what other people have to say about it, I think there is a big focus on trying to at least establish a more improved rushing attack, if you can imagine that, how successful they were at running the ball last year. They were one of the best in the country at doing it.
Yeah, we've got our guy Mike, who's a big fan of yours, checking in for the show here, talking about Sam Pittman's comments about Landon Jackson. And you and I discussed quite a bit of Landon Jackson before we started the live stream here. And just your outlook on what he's going to bring to the Hogs this season.
Landon, a lot of there's a big deal being made about his weight, that he went from, someone said, like 235 to 280 pounds. I think last year he checked in at 240, 245 last fall camp. But I have the spring roster here, and he checked in at spring at 200 and, I don't know if I could find it here. Yeah, he's number 40, 6'7", 269. Now that's a big human being. He is up to 282 pounds. So a lot are about 280. There's a big deal being made about him, his weight throughout the offseason. But he was 269. And I think I commented on that on my live show, or maybe it was a Discord live event that I had. But he had gained some weight. He looks bigger. He looks leaner. He is a high IQ player. From what little sample size we have of him since coming here from LSU, he's got a good head on his shoulders. Again, he's long with those long arms, and being 6'6" and a half, 6'7", somewhere in there. He looks every bit the part. I think I have him on my roster sheet as a potential All-American, potential star. Maybe even someone who, when we get through halfway through the year, we're going to look back and we're going to go, wow, he's standing out a little bit here. I'm not saying he's a first-round draft pick just yet, but I certainly think that's in his wheelhouse. I think he is a potential, if he checks all the boxes and can stay healthy and has the kind of year I think he can have. I think there's going to be potential there where he's going to be discussed as one of the top 10 defensive players out of this conference, which usually means you're probably a first-round draft prospect. But we'll have to wait and see. You got to go out and prove it, right? There's that other side of it. But I was pretty impressed by the way he looked and in spring camp. Pretty explosive, but mostly it's that length. It's those long arms and his ability to get after the opposing tackle in front of him and to get after the quarterback. So I think he's primed to have a pretty good season. But a lot of things have got to come into place. And here's another thing too. People got to remember, last year they were a 3-front. The rotation looked a little bit different. Guys were trying to adapt to that. This year it's going to be it's probably going to look more like a 4-2. Or kind of a mix of a 4-2, 4-3, kind of a multiple look up front on the defensive line. So that's just more bodies for people to deal with on the defensive line, hopefully giving Landon Jackson an opportunity to make an impact in the opposing backfield, if you will.
We got Ty Hudson here. Tusk Talk with Ty is the place to be on YouTube to talk Arkansas football on a regular basis. Ty, you gave us that was one huge reason to believe that this defense can be better, because it was pretty dismal last year. They were bottom 10 in the nation in total defense, but they do bring in this stud Landon Jackson from LSU. However, it's been a little alarming the last I'd say 2 off seasons in terms of the departures. Some of the decisions have been made in the transfer portal leaving Arkansas from guys that you would think otherwise. Jalen Catalon is obviously the guy that comes to mind first and foremost, but some other guys as well that seem to be, they were star players at Arkansas, extremely productive players that decided to move on. So besides Landon Jackson, is there reason to believe that this defense is going to be SEC worthy this year?
Yes. Yeah, I do. And I think this for a number of reasons. Number one, I do think Landon Jackson has unbelievable potential. And Sam talked about this today. I think it was when he was on the panel, or it could have been when he was doing the little post panel thing or post media talk where he goes to the panel of the SEC network. I don't remember where he said that, if it was before or after, but he had said that they're 5 deep in the interior. They weren't that last year. They weren't 5 deep. And I kind of thought maybe he would say 6 deep. Maybe there's still a couple of question marks beyond those initial 5 guys. But they are deep in the interior. They're deep at the defensive end spots. Now, there's a couple of guys I'm just not real high on, on the defensive line. I'm not going to go into, I don't want to throw anything out there yet, but there's a couple of guys on the defensive line. I'm like, I don't know, maybe, a couple of them, they're both older guys. They've not really shown us much over the years, despite, an incredible offer list out of high school. But Christopher Pupal is at linebacker this year. This is a kid that was a freshman All-American a year ago. What little opportunities he had, and I say little, he got to play quite a bit as a redshirt freshman last year, but when he was asked to step up, he stepped up and made plays. He forced fumbles. He had pass deflections. He was getting after the quarterback. He's making plays in the backfield or around the line of scrimmage. He was swarming to the ball. I think he's another guy that's a potential. He's got a very high ceiling, and I am very big on him. You mentioned the secondary and you talked about how bad they were, and it on defense last year, and a big part of that was because of their secondary. It was one of the bottom. It was between them and I think Tennessee is the worst secondaries in the SEC in terms of yards given up. They did a really good job of attacking the transfer portal here. And one of the guys they went out and grabbed that I'm really big on is Lorando Johnson, the 6 foot, 195-pound kid out of Baylor. Grades out high. I've watched film on him, really impressed with him. And through spring camp, he had an impact immediately in that secondary. Again, not saying much because that secondary, I think beyond maybe 4 guys, there's a lot of question marks in that secondary. Jaheim Singletary, who we've talked about a couple times here. In fact, the Georgia Bulldog YouTuber that you bring on, he also kind of got us up to date on him a little bit, but he transferred here. Jaheim Singletary, he's 6'2", 175-pound redshirt freshman out of Georgia, former 5-star. Because of Quincy McAdoo and not being healthy, of course, again, that's a big loss. You could probably see someone like Singletary step up into that role. Sam Pittman talked a little bit about TJ Metcalf, before taking the podium to the local media. There's Jalen Lewis, Dallas Young, Jalen Braxton's another guy you're going to keep an eye on in the secondary. And, of course, Walcott is another Baylor transfer who's probably, I think, going to line up at the nickel for them. They attacked the secondary in the portal. They went out, and again, that's something I've brought up on my live shows. This is the area that impressed me. They needed help, and they went out and they got it. And it kind of started things off with the secondary coach, whose name is slipping my mind at the moment, from Florida State. I'm trying to pull it up here. I cannot believe I'm blanking on his name because Woodson. Who they got out of Florida State. Florida State's secondary last year was incredible, and this guy kind of laid the blueprint for their secondary to take the strides forward that it did. He's at Arkansas now, and I hope. I mean, this is a guy that goes after it in the transfer portal. Not only is he a great recruiter, but I think he's going to lay the blueprint for a much improved secondary. So yeah, I think Sam and he kind of discussed this a little bit. He identified the weaknesses. He identified the problem spots. And went out and attacked it. He got a guy in Travis Williams, defensive coordinator out of UCF, who spent some time at Auburn, who's kind of been around the SEC a little bit. Very aggressive at his last job, at his last gig. Very aggressive defensive coordinator. They kind of cracked a joke today on the SEC Network about, cover zero and how often they had to play that with him as their defensive coordinator last year at UCF. I don't know that they're going to rush 7 or 8 like they did at his previous job this year in the SEC. You really can't afford to do that very often. You'll get burned. But they're going to be more aggressive. Not that they were completely off the gas pedal last year. I mean, remember, Arkansas had a bunch of sacks last year, was somewhat aggressive. Most of that was thanks to a couple of players, Sanders being one of them. But now it's going to be like you've got this multiple front look you're going to operate with a 4-down lineman, couple linebackers. You might see a 4-3, a true 4-3 from time to time. I think the change in how they're doing things, the intensity is going to be higher. Travis Williams apparently has the energy of a bobcat. I mean, this guy, that's all these players talk about is the energy that he brings. I think that's going to rub off on the players, and some of the players have already talked about that a little bit. So they have gone out and addressed some of the issues. We'll see if it all comes together. Of course, there's still question marks. I don't know how much better I think the secondary will be, but I think it'll be better. I just don't know how much. I don't know how you could be much worse, to be fair.
The energy of a bobcat.
It's the first thing that came to mind. I don't know why. I was a Bait Bobcat back in the 90s for like 2 years. Bates Elementary in Fayetteville, and they were the Bobcats. I don't know why. I went to Jefferson, who were the Jaguars, for most of my elementary years. And then I had to go to Bates for 2 years, and they were the Bobcats. I always found that interesting as a mascot. So it was the first thing that kind of came to my mind. Probably
you have that feline-like quickness.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe I should have said like not a hyena. I don't know. I don't know. This house cat we have, this little 2-year-old house cat we have has got a lot of energy. This dude bounces off the walls like crazy, but I don't know what kind of cat he is. Just a house cat. But maybe I should have said Rand, our cat, our pet. That dude flies off the walls. But Travis has a lot of energy, and I guess it's rubbing off on the players.
Well, the chat's bouncing around with some questions here. You've covered most of it, actually. A lot of it stemmed around the defense and changes on the defense and so forth. So you've hit on most of these questions, but I did promise the chat that we would run through these questions. But Jacoby Criswell, is he definitely number 2 at quarterback?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. Cade Fortin, and I don't mean to be hard. I try not to be too hard on college kids, but I don't think he's an SEC backup quarterback. I just don't. And he actually looked better through spring camp. He did. All the quarterbacks got better and sharper as spring camp progressed, as one would expect. Jacoby Criswell is just, I think he's a good mile ahead of him and the freshman. But yeah, he is for sure number 2 at the moment. Now, who knows? Fall camp, it could change everything, but I don't see him slipping that far back.
Now, if memory serves me, Cade Fortin was a fairly highly recruited quarterback, right?
I think he was
I guess not.
I thought he was a high 3-star.
Okay.
And he was recruited by North Carolina, and of course that's where he would ultimately sign. And he's bounced around a little bit, and he's a good kid. He's smart, high.
Fortin originally signed at North Carolina as well as Criswell.
I think that's right. Yeah,
okay.
I think Fortin was that. Yeah, Criswell, of course, who's an Arkansas native, signed with North Carolina. So yeah, I think that's right.
Okay. So, Ty, we know that you're going to deliver your prediction on your platform. We don't want to steal your thunder. Of course, you're going to have your time to deliver your prediction on the Hogs. So we would point everyone to Ty's channel, Tusk Talk with Ty, when he gets ready to deliver that at whatever point. I don't know what your typical ritual is on unveiling your final prediction on the Hogs.
It's always that Monday of game week, that first game, whatever date that is. That's that Monday. I did put a video out about my ceiling, and I do think. And listen, it's gotten mixed reviews. Of course, Hog fans mostly like it, but I've certainly had a couple of non-Hog fans either DM me or some friends of mine who are not Arkansas fans text me and disagree. But and that's fine. But I've got their ceiling at 10 wins, and that doesn't mean I'm putting them at 10 wins. I think that's if everything clicks. If Enos and KJ and the wide receivers and the offensive line, if everyone's in sync on both sides of the ball, but a lot of questions surrounding Dan Enos at Arkansas coming back. If everything falls into place, if the ball bounces their way, like it did in 2021, they had the ball bounce their way a couple of times, and look what happened. They found a way to get to 9 total wins. So I think if everything falls into place, I just really like the way they set up on offense. And I think they can do that without, a couple of other things happening, but well, maybe like Landon Jackson not blowing up. I think they could still reach that, even if Landon Jackson just kind of has a so-so year. A part of me also thinks he's going to need to have a really big year, but with guys like Christopher Prue-Paul, and the host of new guys that they brought in through the portal, and even some of the younger guys too, by the way, look for a Luke Hawes, could make a splash as a freshman. We'll have to wait and see. But if everything falls into place, I'm a big fan of Varkey's Gums, this North Texas tight end they got in out of the transfer. I'm a big fan of his. His highlight film is fun to watch. This dude reminds me so much of maybe a slightly more athletic DJ Williams, who did big things here under Bobby Petrino at the tight end position. He kind of reminds me of a more athletic version of him. A little bit smaller in stature. He's not this 6'6", big, blocking type tight end or even a pass catching. He reminds me so much of DJ, his mold and his athletic ability. We'll see, and with Dan Enos running this 2 tight end set, I'm sure one of these guys is just primed to have a breakout year, whoever that may be, but Gums comes to mind first. But yeah, I think if everything falls into place, and then there's also the question of all these transfers at wide receiver. These are all guys you like, they're coming from small schools. You can't find on a map where Tesla's from. I mean, if I told you, I think it's Hillsdale. No one's heard of Hillsdale. No one's heard of that. Or Texas A&M Commerce, where the other wide receiver whose name is escaping my mind at the moment, 6'5", 6'4" kid. But you can say that about a number of those guys in the wide receiver room. It's hard to pin down where they're from and the level of competition they played against. That's something that comes to question. But through spring camp, I was pretty impressed. I walked away with thinking, damn, Tesla's got a catch radius that is somewhat similar to maybe a Treylon Burks. I'm not saying he is Treylon Burks. I'm not saying he's a first-round prospect. But there are things about him that kind of shine a little bit. And then you have this 6'7" kid out of Bowling Green. I think they did what they need to do in the portal, and they did what they need to do out of recruiting high school prospects. Obviously, those guys are less likely to make a splash year one, especially with the portal players who are going to be in play. But yeah, I think if everything goes Arkansas's way, I think 10 wins is absolutely within reach. But I'm not saying I've got them there. There's still some big hills to climb.
Wow. 10-2 in Fayetteville would be huge.
Haven't done that in a minute. Haven't done that since 2011. It's been a while.
Yes. And you're going to see your old buddy, Bobby Petrino, this season on the other sideline.
Yep.
Is your buddy, speaking of buddies, your guy Warren Thompson, is he still around? Or has he moved on?
Oh, my gosh. What an unfortunate, and it's not to say that that's the first time that's ever happened to me as far as just guys I really thought were going to be special. No, he's not around. I don't even know what happened to him. I hope for the best. I think he had such potential. I mean, listen, you and I could sit here and flap our gums about these guys, but it's up to them to go out and do it. And there might have been, I really don't know his situation. But people that I have been fortunate enough to talk to, other media people, were also just as surprised that he kind of fell to the wayside. And that's unfortunate. But listen, I've got a couple more guys I'm thinking the world of right now. And Tesla's one of them. A guy that I mentioned a minute ago made some really special one-handed grabs at spring camp. It was pretty sensational to see. I already mentioned Varkey's Gums. I'm big on him. So we'll have to wait and see how all this, unfolds and what the product looks like, what the final product looks like on the field. But yeah, that was one unfortunate, but like I said, we could flap our gums all we want. It's up to the players to go out and make it happen.
There it is. Always enjoy the conversation with Ty. folks, you got to check him out on Tusk Talk with Ty right here on YouTube. And as Ty said at the outset, things have been a bit quiet when you only cover one team, but it's talking season in regards to SEC Media Days. That means Ty's got something to say. And then it's really going to explode here in about 10 days with fall camp.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. Fall camp is when it really begins, and the numbers show that. All of a sudden you'll see those analytics just go up over time, throughout the course of August. I'm not really worried about that at all. I just like doing what I do, and fortunate that I'm in a position that I can do it, and I enjoy every second of it. I really do. But July is brutal. July is absolutely brutal. But we've got a lot of changes coming. I'm hoping the next time you talk to me, I won't be in this room. We've got the studio room. We're hoping it's going to be up. It's actually our garage. We're converting it into a studio. God, I feel like I've been saying this for a year and a half, but the goal is at least by the end of fall camp to be completely in over there. No more of the gray walls here, but looking forward to that and getting some new equipment, got a new computer. I'm really looking forward to kicking off this year the right way, in a space where it's just all mine, more room, so looking forward to it.
I hear you on that front for sure. All right. Ty, appreciate you stopping by, man. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. I appreciate it.
All right. The rest of the day here at the Voice of College Football is fast and furious, as it always is, and typically on a Wednesday in particular. So I am recording with Carter from Power Hour LSU here in a couple hours. You're going to see that post coming down right here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel, LSU SEC Media Days Talk with Carter. That's always informative, always fun, always a good time, always interesting. Then we've got our block of live shows coming up starting at 5 Eastern, Michigan Live, John D'Adamo, Michigan Wolverines live on the Michigan Channel, 5 Eastern, 6 Eastern, myself and the Florida State guys on the Florida State Channel with Seminoles Live, and then Cam Underwood, State of the U, and myself, 7 o'clock to 8 Eastern on the Miami Channel. All right, folks, keep it locked in here. As soon as I can catch a breath from these media days the last 2 weeks, I will get to more prediction videos, and then also we will produce more fall camp previews, as we did today with Ohio State, Pat Murphy and Bucknuts, and an excellent rundown on the Ohio State offense. We just posted here in the last couple hours, so check that out as well right here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you in a few hours.